if you've had a headache before, it doesn't mean you understand what chronic migraines are like. Just because you've eaten too much sugar and had a bad reaction to it doesn't mean you understand what it's like to manage diabetes. And it's the same with mental health. Just because you felt sadness and anxiety before doesn't necessarily mean you know what it's like to deal with it chronically. And I think if people could really see that visually in someone else's body, they would maybe understand that better.
Is emotional pain visible? If you know what you're looking for, yes, it absolutely is. It has impacted my ability to work to some extent. It's impacted my ability with friends, with family. Part of the stigma is kind of not knowing, being, for the longest time, historically at least, considered unfit to integrate into polite society.
Mental illness can be frightening because we can't see it. We don't quite understand what it means. We don't have that experience to draw from. And so we may have biases about what mental illness is that come across as stigmatizing attitudes.
In the last 20 years, we've come a long way educating the public, and there's so many resources available online for getting information. I can remember, going to a bookstore and wanting to buy a book on depression at, probably age 20 and being too embarrassed to go to the counter to buy it. But now, you can access information anonymously.
We see more of a change of that happening in the younger generation. I think they seem to be more comfortable with it as they've been sort of freshly exposed to these new views.
What helps characterize mental illness at a most fundamental level is that whatever the people are suffering with, it impacts their daily functioning and daily life in a very significant way.
Even something like getting out of bed or preparing food to eat can be daunting. Sometimes it's because of low energy, sometimes because of low motivation. At other times, because it's so hard to concentrate and focus, people can get distracted even when looking in the fridge to make something to eat.
I've always been an anxious child, and I always struggled with feelings of sadness, but it wasn't until I was about 18 that it hit really hard when I moved away from home and went to university. I tried to receive help at the time, but it was something I wasn't familiar with. I had never spoken to anybody about mental health before. It wasn't something that was discussed in my family. So I went a long time without being treated properly or receiving the proper treatment.
The late diagnosis can lead us to go through life, being bullied, being hazed, being teased, being shunned, held on the fringe, not accepted. And it leaves us wondering, well, wait a moment, I'm normal, what's wrong with everybody else? And I mean, the heartache that can come from a late diagnosis is horrendous. And it is, I would say, perhaps more painful than most people realize.
No one is depressed 100% of the time, even when you're in the depths of your depression. And so, you have a moment where there's something funny on TV and you forget about life for a minute and you laugh. But it can be tough because you don't want other people to always see that, because then they, oh, look, she's better. And that's not always the case. So you do sometimes even want to hide those little happy moments because you need that support and you want people to understand how painful your experience is and how terrible you're feeling. So you might want to hide those lighter moments sometimes, which makes you sometimes more lost in your depression because you almost feel like you need to have it 100% of the time for people to even believe you. Depression is helped by Western medicine for sure. Medication helps the biochemistry that's going on in your brain that's gone haywire, but it's not the only solution. Maintaining a healthy lifestyle is so important. Meditation, yoga. A lot of anxiety is living in in the future, and I think a lot of depression is living in the past. So if you can really learn to practice your meditation and work on it daily, you can really learn to be present in the moment and better able to deal with your emotions.
So when we think of meditation, we can think of two broad categories. One would be more concentrative types of techniques, and I think this is the one that people typically think about, where the idea is that they think they need to clear their mind or become very absorbed in terms of focusing on a specific object of attention. Now, mindfulness is a little different. We're sort of resting in a kind of an open, spacious awareness, and in that awareness we get to notice what unfolds in terms of our experience, and to meet that with this kind awareness.
Essentially, meditation is that space where we can experience mind simply as a screenplay. And who we are is the question behind all of these Eastern teachings. Who we are is not mind. Mind doesn't have solid base. It is an experience. However, who is experiencing that is the big question, and who we are is vast consciousness.
We have really great evidence that mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is as effective as cognitive behavioral therapy, and for some individuals, as effective as medication in preventing future depressive episodes.
There's another study where they looked at just the thickness of the outside layer of the brain and a certain part of the brain that you think would be affected by the meditation. And naturally, as we age, the thickness tends to get to decrease over time as we get older. But for the folks that were very experienced meditators who meditated a long time, there was that thickness was maintained with age, so it prevented that age-related decline in cortical thickening in that particular part of the brain.
There's a part of the brain called the amygdala that's involved with intense emotions and fear states. And after only 8 weeks of training, the number of cells in that part of the brain decreases. And normally this isn't something that we want, to have a decrease in the number of cells in our brain, but certainly when it comes to the amygdala, that's very desired. And clinically it correlates to less anxiety, less fear, and generally doing better.
What journaling and writing can do is go to those places where we suppressed our mind and emotions and didn't experience those moments fully. When we express that through words and speech, you're actually releasing what was suppressed and therefore unblocking these energy centers and therefore starting the healing process in our physical body.
It can become a way to let go of thoughts, feelings, and especially if you're in a situation of distress, not losing your temper, not taking things out on others. Journaling has a myriad of benefits.
When you relive a certain moment in your life, that suppressed emotion is released. And when the suppressed emotion is released and your mind is able to relieve itself from this compressed experience of being bound, then the body starts healing from what is manifesting as that suppression.
Hope is something that gives you perhaps a reason to get out of bed, as hard as that may be some mornings. When you have hope that maybe today I'll be able to do even just a little bit more than yesterday, then there's reason to get out of bed. It may be difficult to deal with mental illness, and maybe you've tried and nothing's quite worked out. But if you keep trying, you will find people who can help, because there are people out there who want to help.
My own healing was this powerful cognition that I am not a powerless being. We're powerful beings. We are vast consciousness. We are all of existence. In Buddhist terms, we are Buddha nature. We are everything. That oneness is not a myth. It is actually experiential when you experience yourself as vast consciousness. So that remembering is what starts the healing.
If someone has confided in you that they're struggling with mental health, that they're likely not looking for advice, they're just looking to be heard and to be understood.
Don't judge us. You know, we might have a couple of extra links in our chain, a couple of extra challenges that we face. Don't judge us by your first impression.